Yeah.
We're live, Your Worship.
Right, Council, I'd like to call a special council meeting of May 9th, 2024 to order with adoption of the agenda. Councilor Cherry, seconded by Councilor Lusau. All in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to right into unfinished business. Number 7, PRC multi-sport facility feasibility study. Ms. Donato, do you have a brief presentation?
I do, Your Worship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So I just have a brief presentation on multi-sport facility feasibility study, a little bit of a background on how we got to where we are and the recommendation put forward by staff. So in 2023, as you recall, we launched the consultation around the current state of the existing facility. As part of that phase, we heard from the community, and there was a lot of interest expressed in rebuilding the arena as part of a new multi-sport facility. So the next step in that process is the feasibility study. So the purpose of the feasibility study is to determine the appropriate mix of amenities at a new complex, to determine the costs associated with building the new complex, the potential cost recovery of the new complex, and the operating costs around the facility. Staff worked on a project scope that was reviewed by the Public Infrastructure Committee and the senior leadership team, of which phase 1 includes community engagement. Phase 2 will be around the development of concept drawings, operational, financial, and economic analysis, as well as identifying a project location, along with more stakeholder and public consultation. The RFP process was initiated on February 1st with a submission deadline of March 7th. We had 9 proposals. The proposals were reviewed by myself, Director Black, and the CAO. They were rated based on experience, qualifications, approach, schedule, engagement process, and pricing. The top 3 proponents were shortlisted and invited to an interview so that we could seek further clarification on their proposals and have them provide any additional information. Our recommendation is that we award the contract for the feasibility study to HCMA. They have extensive experience in community recreation and sports facility planning, from initial stages of needs assessment to feasibility studies to the actual design and construction of the buildings. They have an in-depth understanding of recreation trends, complexities, and design opportunities associated with constructing a multi-sport facility. And most importantly, they can deliver a robust engagement process, and they understand how important that is to communities our size. And they have assembled a team that is well-versed in the recreation industry, and they come highly recommended from other peers in the recreation field. So happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions for Ms. Donato at this time? Councilor Leno.
Your Worship, thank you. Through the chair, I was just looking on the document, the flow chart that's on page 1, or sort of flow chart, and having reviewed the proposal that was sent out by the proponent, I'm wondering sort of in terms of needs assessment process where staff is feeling we are at. So I guess my reading of the document is that we're going to be doing sort of a full engagement, and that's part of the process that we're going through. Previously, we had done a bunch of studies, talked about some of the things we'd like included. So I'm just seeking to sort of understand what would happen next under the current process, just for clarity.
Ms. Donato.
Thank you, through your worship. So Phase one includes community engagement with a diverse group of users as well as other community groups. And we have a component in there to identify the needs. So I think our intent is that we would build off of the arena needs assessment, which is specific to arena ice user groups, but then also go out further to the community and identify other needs in the community as part of that multi-sport facility.
So follow-up, Councillor?
Your worship, no, not for that particular question. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Someone want to put this first motion on the table for me, please?
I'll put it on.
Councillor Palmer?
Just get back to it. Okay, I move that the contract for the indoor multi-sport facility feasibility study be awarded to HCMA Architect and Design, HCMA, for a contract price of $177,900 plus applicable taxes.
And
Right, and that the chief administrative officer be authorized to execute agreement between the city and HCMA.
second for the motion, please, Councillor Cherry. Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Rolando?
Councillor Palmer have some? Go for it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that hopefully there's some comment. I'll just make a sort of a general comment that, we've been going down this path actually since the previous council, some adjustments to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan in respect to the existing forum, the arena. I've been very clear that from my perspective as an individual councillor that this absolutely needs to be a multi-purpose building and not just about ice. And so I'm reasonably pleased with the initial consultation that we did with the community. Obviously, we need to go into a deeper dive, and because it's going to be a complex and a very expensive project and how that's going to work in the future. So I'm supported and actually kind of excited that we're going to the next step. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Rolando?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm supportive of the proposal from staff. I requested the documentation of the proposal and had a chance to review it. That was very helpful in terms of making a decision. Without it, it's just a staff recommendation, and I feel that it would be difficult for me to go forward. Some of the things that I think our key is, as I've said a lot of times, I want this to be a success. We're going to spend a lot of money. We don't want to get to the end of this process and fail at referendum, which is a trend in other communities of similar size. And what I see from the group is their experience with that situation, and their outlining case studies of learning processes through those things, through their involvement with things that did narrowly fail, as well as picking up projects that were not successful at the start or had previous referendums that failed, and then were able to move the needle on those. So that's really good to see, including enunciating the tools and technologies, strategies that they will be deploying to make sure that they reach out to people, and identifying the key issue of not engaging and getting all the way to the end and then it not being successful. So it was really great to see that, and being able to see those reports is very helpful for me in decision-making process, as well as, in the proposal, the proponents did show that they had done work to look into past documents. So we've completed many documents since, engineering documents going back 15 years, as well as various process documents, needs assessment style documents, 2016, 2017, 2018. So it's good to see that they are starting with that background and will have some, have shown that they've done the work to take a look at this project, including has a lot of experience. So happy to see that. It was great, and I thank Mr. Parliament for providing the document.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 7B, is there a bit of a presentation with that, Ms. Finano, regarding the advisory committee, or we're good to go forward?
You're good to go forward, Your Worship, and I'm happy to address any questions that come up.
Great. Someone want to put the motion on the table for me, Councillor Cherry?
I move that the terms of reference for the multi-sport facility advisory committee be approved as presented.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on this motion? Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you to staff for the report and the terms of reference. It's good. It's a really big committee, and that's in many ways not ideal because it can. However, I think it's very thorough, and it's covered that very broad range of user groups within the community. So I'm appreciative of that, and it'll be interesting to see how this moves ahead in the future, looking at priorities.
Good.
Thank
All right. Thank you. Any other comments? Saying none, I'll call the question. Oh, Councillor Lucette, sorry.
Thank you, Marcel. Yeah, when it comes to the voting members, I do have to agree with Councillor Palmer that it is very robust. I think another one that should be included would be seniors. They're a huge demographic, and just to make sure that the facility is accessible to them would be something to consider.
Okay. So any comment on that, Ms. Donato, with some of the groups that you've already planned for in the advisory committee? Some of them may include seniors, is that not correct?
Through your worship, we do have 3 citizens at large on the committee and one with a focus on accessibility. We envisioned that being captured there. However, if council feels that a senior representative may be more appropriate, we can definitely add them into, add them onto the terms of reference.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mary Souls. And this is the problem with the long list is when does it stop? So I think it's very valid comments. I also note that very typically on active committees are very often older demographics, including seniors. And so I think we will have that voice. This isn't preventing that voice from being there. I also note that we do have a seniors center that is separate and distinct from this at this point. Yeah. So I think it's very valid, but I think that we're capturing that essence with the existing list.
I agree. I looked at some of the committees and I know a lot of people in some of those organizations, and most of them are my age or older, which puts them in that seniors category, Council. So, Councillor Orlando.
Your worship, I want to voice my support for Councillor Lucio's suggestion that seniors representative be included, and as mentioned before, perhaps in one of the 3 citizens at large. I do recognize the comments from council that it is already a large and unwieldy, can be a large group which can be unwieldy to get everyone organized for meetings and that kind of stuff. But I do think it is really essential. Part of my feeling is that although we do have a facility, it is for seniors here. It is a specific kind of facility, and seniors' involvement in the facility it has its own specific needs, and I really think that it increases our chance of success with the referendum if we have a big constituent group member. It is a Parks, Recreation and Culture department, so we want to make sure that we are seeing that nature of involvement in community public life, sort of exercise activities, social activities be included. So I would like to see that included specifically within the 3 citizens at large.
So can you make that happen without changing the motion, Mr. Neto? I'll ask for clarification in a second.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, Mayor Sills, I would suggest that the members put an amending motion to add that,
Okay.
and then we can have a brief debate if needed.
Okay. So do you want to amend that, Councillor Luciao, to include seniors?
Yes.
A member of the senior citizens group, or just seniors at large? Mr. Nutter.
Your worship, if I may, I would recommend that we include a member of the Senior Center Association.
Okay,
And then that way they can bring it back to their membership as well.
does that work for the mover and seconder?
Yes.
Sure, so if I understand it, I'm happy to second that. If I understand the meaning is they can pick who they would like
Yeah,
to
so
send.
they would elect someone
Yeah.
from their association to sit on the committee, and then that individual could relay what comes out of the committee to their membership.
Mhm.
So they're well informed.
Okay, any comments on the amendment, Councillor Cherry?
Just for clarification, that's gonna be for one of the 3 citizens at large, not for another representative? Or does that fill that?
That's correct, it
That's
is one of the
space.
3 citizens at large. Was that not the motion? Is that what you asked for, Councillor Romano?
I believe so, that's what we were discussing.
Councilor
Yeah, my thought is right now there's 20 representatives. Is it better to have an odd number if it comes to any voting that the,
This is so big, it doesn't.
14.
well, there's also these ones.
Councillor Palmer?
I would suggest doing this as an amending motion. I do have a comment on the original, so call a question on that.
Okay, so I'll call the question on the amended motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. You have comment on the original motion?
Yeah, so I think you just caught that there. The committee shall, so it says in the terms of reference, committee shall consist of 14, 21. So, so what should that read?
It should read 21.
So is it,
21.
so is it 21 still, or is it 22 now with that amending motion?
It's actually 20 according to the list.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So now it's 21? Unless that's replacing one of them.
It will be 21 with the seniors rep.
Okay, right, okay.
All right,
So that's
all
just
in
a
favor of
typo.
that?
Yeah,
Okay,
just correct that typo.
any comments on the original motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Your worship, this is the original motion to adopt this list here?
With,
that correct?
with the change.
With
With
the
the amending
change.
change, yeah.
Yep.
I would like further discussion to suggest with one question as well as 2 other suggestions for the list prior to
Okay,
that.
question?
Sure. My question, I guess, to staff is regarding the Indigenous Friendship Society. They are often called to consult and provide services to groups across the, all around the community. I think of other committees and groups I'm involved in, and they are requested to provide support to those communities, but they don't necessarily have a support system to pay for staffing or pay for, the costs incurred for them. So I'm wondering if this group and perhaps other groups that would be in a similar situation, I think maybe they're maybe seniors perhaps or another group, how we will be providing support to groups who might find themselves, like the Indigenous Friendship Society, burdened with a lot of these types of requests and not really having a mechanism to provide that support.
Excuse me, through the chair, but is that the topic being discussed at hand right now?
Well, it's just a question that it's now on the table. I'm gonna ask Mr. Natter to weigh in, but here's the thing. So we've got a list of people we'd like to sit on there. That doesn't mean that it's mandatory for them to sit if they don't have the capacity. Is that not correct?
Your worship, if they don't have the capacity, it would be their decision whether or not to join the committee, but we would still continue to reach out to them in whatever capacity would be acceptable to them. If they're not able to attend meetings, we could email them documents, we could schedule one-on-one meetings at times that are convenient for them as well. So we could definitely look at ways to get creative and to still engage them in the process, because I do think the composition is important. And if it is a capacity issue, we just need to figure out how we can work around that.
And that's
issue.
something that you would deal with no matter what.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Okay, so you have a couple more suggestions, Councillor Orlando?
Yeah, Your Worship, and I do appreciate Councillor Stakenhurst's comments. It was a fairly short turnaround time. We saw the agenda this week, and I have made an effort to reach out to groups to find out on my own whether what their thoughts and feelings are. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to connect with all of them, including Indigenous Friendship Society. So this is sort of me trying to gather enough information to make the right decision, given the time constraints and work constraints that we all have. Your worship, as well, on a new topic related, and thanks for staff for clarifying, the ongoing process of working out with these groups, how to best make it work going forward. I appreciate that. Moving forward, I had two other suggestions for this group. One is an existing user of the facility, a group that has quite extensive use, especially seasonal use of the facility. The other one is not a current user of the facility, but maybe worth considering given an ability to perhaps attract capital funding from other areas. So starting with the first one, the skate camp here is super popular with a few hundred kids in the summer, and they often use the ice rink for rain days and smoke days in the summer right now. I have a strong belief that including a skateboarding group on this committee would improve the chance of success at a referendum dramatically, as it's a big user group and often does not requiring of a lot of resources for an indoor facility, which is typically a small place. So I would like to put forward that motion that an amending motion that a representative from the skateboard community be added to our, unfortunately, very large and growing list.
Good. Second from a motion? Do you want to discuss it?
Yeah, I'm considering seconding. I just like clarification. Rather than doing multiple ones, I'm just wondering, is there another one after this? Or?
Sure. The other one is a member of the arts community. I sit on, for example, Arts Revelstoke. I'm an advisor to the Arts Revelstoke group, and they are, exploring capital projects and facilities for the future as part of ongoing arts development in the community. The funding streams available to those types of groups are different than traditional sports funding groups. So I feel that if there was an opportunity to co-locate, and they do have immediate needs, for example, for the adjacent, the theater that's nearby there, sort of backstage type of stuff, all kinds of needs and possibilities and options. And it might be worth including that group for the ability to increase the chance of finding capital funding and making the budget for the project. So as two included, do you want me to do those ones separately?
Yeah, it's a good
I think
question.
you're better to do them separately.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
So does someone?
So I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, so skateboard member, someone want to make any comment?
Just a quick question for clarification, if I can, through the chair. What is the, I've lost my words, quorum for this group as it currently sits, and what would it be with an extra two members?
It's 21, and with an extra 2, it would be 23.
So to have quorum, you need everybody?
Oh, sorry, quorum. So would we need 12?
12.
Council Palmer?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's a good point. And this is the concern even with the smaller list. So we're now adding a potentially total of 3 after this one. And at what point does it become non-functional? And large committees sometimes have a great amount of difficulty getting quorum. I think Councillor Orlando's points are very warranted, and it's just where is that boundary as far as and will there be someone else that pops up later on and looking for amendment? I could support this conditionally that we, and maybe this is a question for the corporate officer, but conditionally that quorum would be set at a smaller number so that we can, what that number would be, maybe 9 or something like that.
So Ms. Boyd, do you know, can we set the quorum at smaller? Because I too would be quite concerned. I just don't think we're going to meet quorum on a regular basis if we have 12. Councillor Chair.
Your worship, while she's looking that up, just so we're on the same page, I am in favor of including as many user groups as possible in this. I just want to ensure that we don't end up having meetings that aren't properly attended.
Hmm.
So that's my only fear.
Councillor Stippler.
Thank you. Through the chair, just to echo what Councillor Cherry is saying, I appreciate his concern and I worry that, you know, by being more inclusive and inviting everybody to the table, but then we lower quorum, what have we really established? So I think honestly, I think, you know, I think as it is, I'm fine with it. You know, I think also, you know, the other factor is we're a relatively small community. So while I may not be on a skateboard, I'm frequently at the skateboard park. You know, so that's, you know, and I talk regularly with members of that community. So I think it's, you know, it's a small community. There's a lot of overlap as to, you know, interests and abilities. So
Good
thank
point.
you.
Any other comments? Councillor Lucille.
I think so. So we have all these representatives. If a user group isn't able to offer a representative, would that change quorum? Or would quorum stay at 50% regardless of if an organization can offer a representative?
You're gonna ask Ms. Floyd that question.
Through the chair, quorum can be established by council. So it doesn't have to be 50%. We can include it in the terms of reference.
Okay.
So then further to that, that's a very good question, Councilor Luciano. If somebody is not available to commit. But if quorum's reduced and you're going to share information.
Well, through your worship, with other committees, if we don't get representative from the group identified on the terms of reference, we've typically opened it up to other community members that may be interested. So I think there is that option to do that as well.
Okay.
I mean, with a lot of these user groups, most of them have boards. So if it isn't a board member, they could reach out to a member that a participant in that activity that may want to sit and represent that group.
So, Ms. Donato, with your experience in some of these things, when we've got a group of 20 to 24, do you feel we're going to meet quorum and we're going to get participation?
I feel based on this topic, we will. I
Okay.
think there's a lot of interest from the groups and the community. There's milestones where these groups will be engaged. So it's not a regular monthly meeting or every 2 months. I think they will be engaged, and I don't think it will be too onerous on the groups. I think we'll try to make it as seamless as possible for them to stay engaged and not feel overburdened.
Okay, Councillor Dillon.
Through the chair, I'm generally happy to go with whatever the group decides on this. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. I just want to point out that council does appoint the members of the committee essentially. So the citizens at large, we can make an effort to appoint people who are part of those user groups if they come forward with interest, as opposed to necessarily expanding the scope of the terms of reference. Just a thought. I guess I'm good with whatever the group here seems to decide.
Okay, Councillor Palmer, in your comment?
Yeah, I'm going to be supportive of the motion for the additional, just came back to the motion on the table for, and that was for the skateboarding community. I'll be supportive of that, and it's an interesting conversation. I think the director made a very valid point that this is a very important community initiative, and further to Councillor Orlando's comments, that getting that voice from the entire community as much as we possibly can, without going to a committee of 9,000 people, that this is good, and if it's not working for some reason, we can adjust it in the future. So I will be supportive of the motion as it stands.
Any other comments on adding the skateboard group? Councillor Lam.
Yeah, Your Worship, I do appreciate the comments from council members regarding the membership. It is a big group already, and I know one more seems like a lot. However, in reviewing the proponent's application, they have noted specifically the various consultation methods they will be using, including technological components, as well as the public-facing components. So I feel that, yeah, it's hard to get, 20, whatever, right now, 24 people together in a room. I don't know if it's much harder than getting 21 people together in a room. And there is that other offline or online non-meeting time ability to engage the various community groups to do it. And my main thought especially is that it's an existing user group that uses a facility in a season when it is not in use, the ice rink, and is also fairly portable and can work with other things, other groups like the Roller Derby Association, and maybe there's an opportunity there for wintertime facility, a much smaller scaled back thing like mini ramp, that kind of stuff that can go in a room half the size of this one. So, and I think you'll get a lot of support from those people if they see themselves included in this complex at the end for not much additional costs.
All right, Councilor Cherry,
Yeah,
and
just
then I'll call for.
Just one last question, or one last comment, Your Worship. In my eyes, I see it as, more user groups hopefully equals more community buy-in. We can amend in terms of reference and the forum details after this is
Yep.
needed.
All right, I'll call a question on adding skateboard member. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, Councilor Palmer.
Yeah, so I have a question. What was my question back to? Because we're back to the original motion. Just clarification on the representation. The way I'm reading this is those societies, and maybe it's not clear, but I'm understanding that there are specific societies or entities that would be appointing someone, not council appointing. So we're giving the broad categories, but those particular societies would actually make the decision, not us. Am I correct?
That's correct. Is
Your
that
Worship,
correct?
that is correct. The intention would be to reach out to these groups with a formal letter attaching the terms of reference, inviting them to nominate someone from their board or their executive to represent that group on this committee. Then those would all come to council.
Okay. All right, so we've still got to vote on the original motion, is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship. However, I believe
But Councillor Armando
Councillor
wanted
Armando
to
had
add one
an
more.
additional.
Oh yeah, Your Worship. Yeah, and that was adding, an arts community representative. I want to be clear. I mentioned earlier Arts Rebel, so that is sort of one of two major, and there's also tertiary arts groups in town, including Revelstoke Visual Arts Society. My main thought is they can bring a lot to the facility, and they also have they have the drive and energy to find facilities that can improve the facility a lot and have access to a whole other funding stream of capital grants related to arts type projects, or even at a smaller scale may have, room booking space, dance classes, performing arts related sort of things, camps for kids, that kind of stuff that they already offer. There might be need for that. So I would appreciate it if council could consider the inclusion of an arts rep. And I'm not specifying who I wouldn't want to really choose from one group or the other or how that works right now, but maybe leave that up to the groups to decide for themselves if council supports it. So.
We can leave it to staff to make that decision and reach out to the appropriate person. Someone want to second that motion, please? Councilor Palmer. Further discussion?
I do have a question. That ambiguity, so back to the director of recreation, and there is a bit of ambiguity there. Does that still work?
Through your worship, I think in a situation like that, we could have a representative of the arts and culture sector, and we could advertise open that vacancy we can advertise the vacancy.
Right.
We can receive submissions, and those submissions would go to council, and council would make the recommendation on a representative from that sector. Similar to the way we would manage the citizens at large. Those would come in, council, we provide a staff report outlining the individuals that applied, and then council would make a recommendation.
Okay.
So let's just friendly, so that motion contains that essence of that. I'm supportive of that. Thanks.
Good. Councilor Lucio, you had your hand up. Did I miss you?
That was to second it.
Okay.
You can have a second.
We'll leave it the way it was, if that's okay with you.
I'm fine with that.
Good. All right. No further discussion on the motion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimous.
Original motion.
As amended.
As amended. Now the original motion. You want to speak to the original motion?
No, I believe this would be the time to amend the quorum
Okay.
in the terms of reference to say 9. If that's as a minimum. Unless anybody has a better idea.
Councillor Palmer and Councillor Lucia.
Yeah, so we're back on the debate on the original motion. I'm fine with doing that, but at the same time, based on the director's comments, I think we're fine leaving it at this very large number and see how that transpires, and if necessary, make an adjustment in the future.
Okay. Councillor Lucia, comment?
I was going to echo what Councillor Palmer said.
Okay, good. So unless someone wants to put the motion on the table to amend, we'll leave it the way it is. And I will call the question on the original motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Donato. Appreciate it.
Good work.
All right, moving on to item 8A. Excuse me, bylaws, official community plan amendment bylaw 2382. Ms. Hartling, you have a brief presentation, do you?
I do not have a presentation. I'm just going to give an overview of the application for council's consideration.
Perfect.
The plans are being revised, so I'll just speak to the application.
All right, good, thank you.
So what council has in front of you today is an official community plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment. The property is located at 200 3rd Street, just the corner of Borden and 3rd, just down in council chambers here. So the application is proposing to redesignate the property from low-density residential to mixed use and rezone from single and two-family residential, the R2 zone, to the downtown fringe commercial zone, which is C2. And this is for the proposal that's currently to propose a commercial 2-story building for office spaces. So for this application review, Windsor Heritage Conservation Area, it's currently a vacant property. So there's official community plan policies over the heritage conservation area, guiding the applicant to have public consultation incorporated into their plans in order for the rezoning to be supported. So the applicant did host a public information meeting March 4th. And there's a summary of the engagement session attached to the council package. At this time, staff are bringing the 2 bylaws forward to council as a formal introduction of the proposed commercial building that's looking for an OCP and zoning change. The plans are currently being revised by the applicant from all of the public comments that were received. They did have 10 people attend their meeting, and staff have received public comments as well, noting different design of the building to be considered. And those are being addressed right now by the applicant, but staff are bringing this forward for council feedback. You'll see there's 5 recommendations there. So that the bylaw be read, the zoning bylaw be read first time, that the OCP be read a first time. And because this is an official community plan amendment, that council considers all those impacted by the proposal. And staff are recommending consultation for referrals with the Advisory Planning Commission, Heritage Advisory Commission, City Departments, RCMP, BC Hydro, TELUS, Forest BC, and Superior Health. We do have an addition on that as a recommendation. So with the city departments, one of them is economic development with our Indigenous liaison. And I have spoken to him and he has suggested to add First Nations. So that is something that is not on the list currently for council's consideration. And then number 4 is that council has reviewed the applicant's public information meeting engagement summary report. And that prior to second reading consideration, the applicant schedules a follow-up public information meeting to present the revised plans that's incorporated the public feedback, staff feedback, and council feedback. And then staff are proposing to bring back for second reading after all that's been done. And a public hearing is still required. It's an official community plan amendment. But for the front end, we're looking at doing more public engagement as it is in the Heritage District, close to the downtown or residential area.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hartling. So as we go through things, we'll discuss with council some possible changes, but let's get this on the table here, the OCP amendment bylaw. Be ready first time. Someone want to make that motion, Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, I move that the official community plan amendment bylaw number 2382 be read a first time.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Cherry.
I'll speak to the motion.
Go for it.
Yeah, so definitely, as the planner articulated, this is the first of steps, and we need to hear from the community. And there will be a public hearing, assuming it moves along. There's three more readings after this, so I'm supportive to get that out so that we get public feedback on the proposal.
Okay. Any other comments from council regarding OCP amendment? Councillor Ryan.
Your worship, and apologies due to my lack of expertise. I do not know if this question is specifically addressed to OCP or the zoning amendment. It might be the latter motion after this. But I have through the chair, I have a question of staff in that this property, as I understand it, the future zoning proposed under the zoning bylaw draft is LD1, which is a residential use. Is that correct? And I guess to state my question just in plain words is, through this process, are we on a pathway to include housing in this application? I know that's not directly what's proposed in the application, but going through this lengthy OCP amendment and zoning amendment bylaw, it seems to me that this is not heading towards housing, even if it were revised. The purpose of this would be to attain a commercial zoning for the property.
Ms. Hartling, sorry.
Through your worship, the proposed zone, the current zone is R2. If it was to stay as R2, then it would go to the RLD1, potentially in the new bylaw. But it's proposed to go to the fringe commercial, so then it would be going to the standard commercial zone. There are permitted residential uses in the C2 zone, so it could be a mixed-use building with top floor residential, bottom floor commercial. The current proposal that you see is for office space. Previously, there was proposal for a dwelling unit above, so it's something that the applicant, if council has recommendations or the public has recommendations of use, because that is something to be considered with this application, that is something that's permitted in that zone. So it could be a use that is then proposed to council later. Just with a note of the C2 zone, it does list a lot of permitted uses in that zone. The staff have highlighted, and the applicant is agreeable to a covenant just to ensure the type of uses that the public does expect to have there. So whether that's office space or if there is an amended proposed use, then there is more assurance to what is going in the building.
Thank you.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Souls. Good points. And these are some of the questions I have in the back of my mind, and that's where I think we really need to hear from the public. From my lens, when we look at all the housing issues, this is proposing office buildings above, and I wonder if that would be better residential units on the top, and if that was considered before, how that goes ahead. And it looks like the developer is considering options. They have some intended uses there, but it seems like there's some options, and I think that would possibly make it more palatable to some that might be opposed to it, the residential component disappearing.
Councillor Lusso and Councillor Staples.
Yeah, thank you, Marcellus. If we're going down this discussion, if we're looking for them to put housing in, would this new zoning allow them to short-term rental out to the housing that we're pushing them for? No? Perfect.
Through your worship, short-term rental would only be permitted if there was a single family dwelling in the C2 zone. But then you would just be doing a single family dwelling in the current residential zone and wouldn't be going through rezoning. So
Okay, so now with the mixed use.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Councillor Staples.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Hartling, I have a question in regards to the answer that was just given. While it wouldn't be conceivable to allow short-term rentals, could you not, in fact, with C2 zoning, have some kind of unattended key entry hotel up top with the commercial down below?
Through your worship, that's where there would be a covenant specifying the use, and then it would be up to bylaw enforcement to enforce that restriction.
And then further, I mean, my concern is that, you know, nationally, provincially, we're in a housing crisis. We're taking something that's, you know, like zoned as R1. If my understanding of the provincial legislation that's just been proposed is we could potentially have 3 units on this lot. With the current, and now what we're doing is we're essentially taking that lot, we're rezoning it to commercial. And we're taking away from the R1, not to mention that it is in the heritage zone. So
The proposal for this is for commercial. The owners of the property are not proposing residential. You can't force them into residential, so I just want that to be clear. Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, it's interesting, just dialogue. I think it's valid here. In some ways, we're sort of jumping ahead of ourselves in a way, because putting it out to the community, and I'm sure the developers listening to this conversation, there's a representative here. From my lens, you know, going down into the weeds, also a little bit, is that lot has been vacant as a residential lot for a long time. And so, you know, potentially, if there's a reconsideration of residential uses on that, we're getting infill in our community, and that might be very valuable for potential if that's the path we go down. I questioned through to the planner at this stage. It seems to me we have the option of just proceeding with the first reading, and there's ample opportunity in the future for adjustments. And I'm happy to do that, and that's the motion on the table right now. Could council, and it's probably in your report, could council request some other little direction at this point?
Yes.
As far,
Through your worship, yes.
yeah. So Mayor Souls, we could do that, but I'm more inclined to hear from the community and see where they go. There's a public information meeting and see where this goes.
Okay, Councillor Stickler.
just on the note of community engagement, which I'm generally in favor for, but when did we just complete the OCP? Just out of curiosity.
July of last year.
July. So my
Is that
point.
correct, Ms. Harder?
2022, yeah.
2022, sorry.
So my point on community engagement is what's happened in the past from my perspective in regards to community engagement is that we engage, and we don't really listen, and we keep on asking the same question over and over again, having just done the OCP process. And what I fear is that we're not really having a conversation. We're just asking the same question repetitively until we get a different answer or until nobody shows up to have a conversation. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comment, Councillor Chair?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I think this is the first OCP amendment we've seen since we've been on council.
Yes.
And, you know, don't have a lot of experience in it, I guess. There is a conversation we had outside of what's in front of us is, yes, there's a housing issue. We also don't have any commercial space. There's going to be creep from the downtown into the residential area. So, you know, as we'll find out in the public hearing, how the community feels about that.
Really quickly, if I may, there is commercial available. It wasn't purchased by this developer. I mean, that's not.
Okay. Your points are taken. Any other comment on reading the OCP amendment bylaw a first time? Councillor Olano.
Yeah, Your Worship. Generally, I want to echo support for Councillor Stapenhurst's questions. we've just completed an OCP. We have RLD1 proposed for this property under the proposed zoning bylaw. Housing is a major issue in our community. We've heard that from everyone, and this is zoned for housing. It was planned before and after. I do appreciate people's, landowners' rights to bring these applications forward. And I do appreciate the comments that they have made in the supplementary documents here, including that they want to hear from council on what their thoughts and feelings are so that they can best revise their application. And for me, that comes back to housing. In a broader sense, I have concerns about what message we will send to the community midstream of completing these intensive planning processes, and then putting a lot of time, effort, and staff resources into this right during the final leg of our push to finally, since 1982, bring our zoning bylaw up to date so that we can welcome a wave of stable investment into housing, into commercial, into everything else that we want to develop in our community. But this, I feel, by these large processes where we will spend some community capital, we will have some challenging times, and we will spend a lot of resources on it. So my feedback is, my sense is that if housing is included in this proposal, then it's much more supportable. But changing what is currently R2 and is planned to be RLD1, I believe, to a commercial use, I think that's a lot of resources to put in if it's simply commercial development.
Thanks for your comment, Councilor Palmer.
Interesting comments. I would be open to either a motion after this or contained within this to adjust so that we give staff some sort of direction to ask the developer to consider housing components on this. I'd be supportive. I can see just from the conversation here that that's likely going to happen regardless if we formalize that or not. Just a couple of points on the OCP that is already 2 years old. Pretty, by the time this gets through, it'll be a quarter of the way through of what we've been told that, at the very minimum, you should be updating your OCP every 10 years. So we'll be a quarter of the way through that time span. And quite frankly, it is very normal for OCPs to happen several times through the years as we understand the community and as the community evolves. So we're not static from that consultation with the community on the OCP, which is actually 4 years old. And so it's a change. And also this is adjacent, it's looking at complementary uses to this existing area. It's just around the corner here. So I think it's a normal and prudent evolution as we go ahead, as we evolve as a community. So that's just a couple of points on that. But if a councillor or if you're just wanting to amend this or I'd certainly be open to a motion after this to direct staff to work with the developer to consider housing components.
Yeah, we can add another motion there. I prefer to leave this motion as reading it the first time because it's an OCP amendment bylaw. Any further questions or comments on the motion on the table? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No. Councillor Stapenhurst is opposed. Balance of council is favor. This motion passes. So item number 2. So Ms. Hartling, I'm just going to ask for clarification from Development Services perspective. So there will be some comments from council as to things that council may prefer to see before it goes back out to the public. Are you comfortable in receiving those things before I go on with the zoning amendment bylaw or after? And that might be, Ms. Floyd, that may come to you for clarification as to cart before the horse or horse before the cart.
Through your worship, you are suggesting that the residential component be discussed
well, residential component and then form and character, maybe height, removal of deck or keeping deck.
Character is part of the development permit.
So any of those things, is that something that we should talk about now, Ms. Hartling?
I'm just trying to figure out where in the recommendation it would go. Number 4, we need to go before number 4, as that's after council has given feedback that they're incorporated into the plans. So
Okay.
it either need to be after recommendation 2 or 3 to add that in.
So from your perspective, Councillor Palmer, clarification on manner of way we do it.
After 2 would be the most appropriate.
Oh,
You're after that?
I'm fine with that. So based on that, I'll put a motion that zoning amendment bylaw number 2383 be read a first time.
Second for the motion, please, Councillor Lucille. Discussion, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah. We're just at first reading here. There's so
Yep.
much opportunity to fix things. The magnification of the housing crisis is put at top of mind of all of council members and is understandable. At the same time, there's plenty of opportunity. So I start to wonder about the following motions, but that's kind of a separate, whether they're appropriate at this time or not, but that's maybe a question for after. So I think much like the OCP, the zoning, which has to comply, work with the OCP, so it's fine. Right now, it might get tweaked.
Okay. Councillor Chair,
Just a quick comment, through the chair. The zoning amendment allows for a housing component in a mixed use capacity.
Yeah.
Just something for council to consider.
Mhm.
So it is allowable use.
Councillor Lucille, did you have a comment? Okay. Councillor Stevener's comment on this.
I've already made my comments, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Leonard.
Your worship, more just a general comment for council and public consumption. First reading, allows, in my mind, at least from my perspective, an opportunity to consider housing components and how the proponent brings this forward, and also supports staff's decision to bring the application to this stage. Staff generally have the ability to recommend, or they also have and that's generally what they do, or they have the opportunity not to recommend. So I'm trying to be supportive of that. However, I am wary of the timing between OCP and zoning bylaw. I'm wary of the heritage conservation zone. I'm wary of the message that will send to change to commercial what is a residential use. I'm wary of the perception it will have on the impact to the character of the neighborhood, and I'm wary of extending commercial out in there and the political capital that we will all have to pay, in my view, in the community. Could be wrong on that last one, but that's my thoughts.
Okay. Councillor Demlin, any comment?
Yeah, sure. I am generally, as the proposal sits, not in support of it. I'm very rarely going to find myself personally in support of taking any sort of housing away and turning it into commercial. I think that's the exact opposite of what we want to do. But as other councillors have said, first reading gives us the opportunity to get public feedback on it. And if the public disagrees with my personal view, then it is my job to represent the public's view, not my own, as I've said the entire time. So I am willing to put this out for the public. I am willing to give the proponent an opportunity to, in my view, as a personal councillor, to fix this, because as it stands, I am wildly not in support of the proposal, but I'm willing to give it its due process, and that's the job.
Okay, appreciate it. Okay, so, I'm going to call the question on the zoning amendment law. All those in favor? Opposed? Note Councillor Stevener is opposed. Balance of councils in favor. This motion passes. Item number 3, Councillor Palmer.
So Mayor Souls, I'm just contemplating putting a motion on the table that staff will work with the developer to endeavor to whatever is a terrible word, but anyway, endeavor to include residential components on this parcel. And maybe there's a question through to staff on that, whether that they see this working. I'm sort of questioning based on the dialogue that we've had, and it seems like there's a very strong appetite by council to ensure there's residential components on this parcel. And if that's the case, is it a little bit premature to be fanning this out to other agencies at this point, I guess is the question that I have.
Ms. Hartland, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, through your worship, staff will refer it out once we receive a revised plan. So the applicant is in attendance today, and if council does have direction for staff, we would wait for the revised plans to refer it out then, if that is the direction. Otherwise, we refer it out and just with the meeting minutes of the council, sending it out to agencies.
Okay, Councilor Palmer, you want to make a comment, then I'm going to wait.
Yeah, so the second question then, if I put a motion on the table that staff work with the developer to include residential components at this stage before the following motions, does that work for staff? Does that work, that mechanism work?
Through your worship, staff can work with the developer on that recommendation. It's definitely something we can bring back. That is a permitted use in the proposal. And that's something that we can go back to the applicant with if that is a recommendation by council.
Good. So before you put that on the motion, a couple other things that I want to bring up,
Yeah.
right, just to kick around. So I'm concerned about height because of the neighboring property. And I'm concerned about the look of the building not being heritage enough, being on that downtown. And I don't know what that means, but I don't want it to look like this building behind. And the reason I'm bringing that up, it's owned by the same proponents. And so I want it to look more like the landscaping of the housing that's in the area. I'm cognizant of that. And then quite concerned about if there's not going to be housing on that top, why is there a deck looking down into the yards below? But that was just something I wanted to bring up around this table. So now,
Okay, yeah, so I'll refer to that, but I'll put that motion on the table that staff work with the developer to include residential components on the parcel at 200 3rd Street East.
okay. Seconder for that motion, Councilor Lucelle. Any further discussion on that? You want to speak to it, Councilor Fong?
Yeah, you made some very valid points, Mayor Souls. I think that the previous council of which you and I were on, stumbled on working with the developer to make that better. I mean, it's good, but it could have been better, but that's water under the bridge. There is another one that's in the heritage component across Kitty Corner over here. And some people would argue that that's not consistent with heritage, but it was considered when that building was done well over a decade, probably 15 years ago. And so what are those steps going ahead? It's us doing this, having this dialogue and making sure the community has input into that and ensuring that the Heritage Commission really takes a good look at that, and there's clear recommendations coming back to council. So that those stages are still there, and if we follow our process, there's really good processes in place to ensure that it is complementary and works within the heritage area. So, and I think on addressing now speaking specifically to the motion, we're addressing these broader concerns about residential components. And again, if we're really concerned about housing, how do we get something built on that on housing? And I think with this motion, we'd be clearly giving that indication that we want that.
Appreciate that. Any other comments on the motion on the table? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. All right, Item number 3, someone want to put that on for me, please?
Yes, I'll take it. I was wondering, it's kind of on the cusp. I'll move the council has considered what persons, organizations, and authorities may be affected by proposed official community plan amendment bylaw number 2382 pursuant to section 475, 476 of the Local Government Act, and given the nature of the amending bylaws, that staff be directed to pursue consultation with the following groups. A. Advisory Planning Commission, Heritage Advisory Commission, City Departments, RCMP, BC Hydro, TELUS, Fortis BC, and Interior Health.
Can we add First Nations on there, please,
Yes, we
as
can
Ms.
add-
Hartling has
Yes,
indicated?
we will add First Nations on there and First Nations.
All right, is there a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Cherry, any discussion on this motion? This, Councillor Staples.
Just a quick question, should the fire department not have some input onto this? Or would they, as part of the process, not outlined?
It says city departments in
Okay,
there, so they're included.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Number 4, does someone want to put that motion on for me? Councillor Devlin, it's more than 2 sentences, so if you could.
I move the council has reviewed the applicant's March 4th, 2024 public information meeting engagement summary report, and prior to second reading, consideration directs the applicant to schedule and hold a follow-up public information meeting to present revised plans that incorporate feedback received from council and affected persons, organizations, and authorities.
Second for that motion. Councillor Lucelle. Any further discussion on that motion? Councillor Staphenhurst.
I'm not sure if this timing of this comment is right, but I think something that we did right in regards to the public hearing that we just held for Simpson Street was ensuring that the schedule was not on a day of council.
Okay.
So that's something that I would recommend doing so in the future as well.
Yeah, we're talking now about public information meeting engagement. Is that what you're meaning, like we did
Sure.
yesterday?
Yes, exactly.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Orlando, then Councillor Devlin.
Your worship, through the chair, a technical question for staff based on Councillor Staphenhurst's comment, which I agree with. Sorry, does this public information meaning it doesn't fall under the development approvals process? Is it the same process or bylaws that we're following? Is that correct?
Through your worship, it would be under our development approval procedures bylaw.
Yeah.
So it would be a second one, similar to how the first one was completed, and you'd have an engagement summary report at the end of it.
Sure.
Advertise it, send out letters. So it'd be a second similar type of meeting.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And if I may have a follow-up comment, Your Worship, that procedures bylaw specifically empowers council to specifically ask for the timing of the meeting. So it is included in there. So Councillor Staphenhurst is free to make a motion to specify that it be on a council off day. So during council normal hours, so that, you know, our schedules are in tune with that. Further to that, within that procedures bylaw, the director is required to place 2 newspaper advertisements. That's mandatory within the law, but the wording of the bylaw does say that is at least, or something to that effect, so more can be done. So although it is not specifically outlined in the bylaw that council has the ability to request the timing of the meeting, but I would also like to see that the meeting be advertised in the city's email newsletter, so that people who've subscribed to our email newsletter are able to be aware of this. And this is based on feedback from our last meeting, where people said, hey, we didn't know, there wasn't an ability. It is also specifically required, I believe, and maybe this is a question through staff, that it be advertised on the signage that is on the site. And so I would, I don't know if a motion is required for those things, or if direction is enough for those. And furthermore, the bylaw does reference the ability to use alternate forms of communication. And although we have received, and the proponent has received multiple emails from stakeholders about this, so the request would be that those people who have emailed in at any time during this process about this application also be given a courtesy email in addition to the 100-meter notification requirement.
And I believe staff have already planned that conversation with Ms. Hartling. Is that correct, Ms. Hartling?
Through your worship, that's correct. For the advertising, the applicant will place a newspaper ad 2 consecutive weeks. Staff send out the landowner letters. And then staff have sent a courtesy email to everyone that has reached out by email notifying of this meeting, and then would notify of the public information meeting, as well as the applicant notified that they would also send a letter. I'm not sure if you need to make a formal resolution or we can take it for.
So I just want to ask a question because this will be a public information meeting led by the proponent. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
And then it's up to them to do the appropriate advertising, that sort of thing. You can put it on our website. So I'm going to go. Our communication person isn't here, but Ms. Floyd, can we allow that to go as Councillor Orlando has indicated through our City Views newsletter, that sort of thing, to advise people of this thing coming up?
Your worship, yes, we could. I think it would be good if we could get a specific resolution for that,
Okay.
just so that it's consistent going forward with every application that council wants to do this.
Okay.
Your worship, I'm prepared to make that motion, and that is under the development approvals procedure bylaws section 6.23 mentions not less than in reference to the newspaper advertising, which is on the 2 previous weeks based on community charter requirements. Further to that, I would request as for this particular application that under section 6.24 that gives the director discretion to request alternative communications, that it also be advertised in as much as possible to editions of the city's email newsletter in the same format that it would appear elsewhere, so that the subscribers to the email newsletter will be appraised of this meeting happening.
Okay. Second for that motion.
But your worship, there's still a motion on the table.
Thank you for that. All right, I'll go back to the motion on the table. Any other comments? Councilor Palmer, you had your hand up. Did you want to weigh in?
Yes and no. So the
Start
question,
with the no part first.
so the question is, like, there could be an amending a motion and that,
Yeah.
all that stuff. And if that's an amending motion, I'd be happy to second that. I'm just wondering from staff perspective, is it better as a standalone or as an amending motion to the existing?
Amending motion is fine.
So if I'm understanding correctly, the amending motion would be, and that staff be instructed to the email and the newsletter, that the meeting occur in an off-council meeting, that the advertising would be on the on-site sign that would be advertised for 2 consecutive weeks in the paper ad. Was there others or?
And the last one was the email newsletter,
Oh,
and I'm a bit, in terms of the actual wording of that, I'm a bit conflicted as to how to word that, because I don't believe we're publishing on a regular schedule right now, and those 2-week notices is a community charter requirement, so as a suggestion, the wording could be in the email newsletter at least a week prior to the meeting.
So if the amending motion is those 4 or 5 components, which I think staff has captured,
Yes.
and without getting into the operations, we could do that. I can second that. And I do have a question after, I guess.
Okay. So do we want to, any other comments on that amending motion?
So that's formalized.
That's formalized enough for it? I'll call a question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? The amendment is passed unanimously. You have comments on the original motion?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All those in favor of the original motion
As amended.
as amended? Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Moving on to number 4. That we're at? Five, pardon me, number 5.
That's
You're on a roll, Councillor Devlin.
I'll move that pursuant to section 477 of the Local Government Act, official community plan amendment bylaw number 2382 is consistent with the City of Revelstoke financial plan and solid waste management plan.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Lucien, thank you. Any discussion on the motion?
I'm willing to go first, Your Worship, if that's okay. Ahead of Councillor Palmer, I'll jump in front. I don't really understand this one. I'm going to put it right out there. So I would seek some staff clarification on this section 5, Your Worship. And perhaps Councillor Palmer
Yeah.
runs her rules around.
Yeah, so if I may, so it's actually it's a similar point.
Yeah.
Very similar. So the way I frame pretty much the same question is,
Mhm.
this is a curiosity as to why we as council are saying something about the consistency with the City of Revelstoke financial plan. And so what I was going to be asking formally from the Director of Finance is this publicly, can you state this is consistent, the City of Revelstoke financial plan? And that's the base and solid waste management plan. Yeah, so it's the same
I
question.
have neither director here regarding, Mr. Black's not here and Ms. Moore is not here. So I'll turn to our CAO.
Well, I can assure you that both directors would support this because they're always making sure that their respective departments, but more importantly,
I'll go to
applicable
Ms. Hartman.
plans are consistent with both the financial plan and public works and the solid waste management plan. So guaranteed they would be supportive of that.
Good, thank you, Mr. Parliament. Ms. Hartman, comment?
Yeah, just through the Restricted Council, Local Government Act stipulates that after first reading of official, that's why you're getting this, is because an official community plan amendment, so it's your first one. A zoning bylaw amendment would not require this, because it's amending any section of the official community plan. The Local Government Act stipulates that we have to look at the solid waste management plan and financial plan. So the directors have signed off on this report, so it is a bit administrative, but it is required.
Mhm.
Answer your question, Council?
Yeah, Your Worship. I understand it to mean that it's a requirement for it to be here. I guess what I don't know is how to comment meaningfully on it or whatnot, but it sounds to me like it's a formality type of thing. I don't know if there's an alternative to it. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but yeah, always something to learn here at the council.
Council Palmer, well, I'll go to Ms. Hartman first and Council Palmer.
Through your worship, you might be seeing more comments on that with a larger amendment, and a big repeal replace or, but it does say for every official community plan amendment. So there might be more discussion on that, but it's just that in conjunction with this application, you have to consider your financial plan and consider your solid waste management plan with every official community plan amendment. So depending on the scale, there might be more.
I understand. Right. And thank you through the chair to staff for the explanation. That makes a bit more sense to me. Yeah, sure.
Council Palmer, want to throw your hat in the ring?
Yeah. So again, it is a curiosity, the legal requirements to have this on there. Functionally, from my lens, this is pretty safe. So basically, the legislation is saying to council, you have considered, we're making a motion. So the question, don't answer it, individual councilors, did you actually look at the financial plan and make sure this was consistent? And did you look at the liquid waste management plan and make sure this is consistent? From my lens, it's so small and I just can't imagine how the financial plan would be impacted by this. I just cannot conceive it. On the solid waste management plan, on the other hand, again, it's just one connection that already has entitled rights, but there's a higher flow. And we do have issues on our expanding infrastructure requirements.
Right.
And the infill requirements being forced on us or that we have voluntarily done is far, far bigger than this one unit. But it's not cumulatively, it's not trivial, and it's something that we should be looking at in the future. But I can support this as it is. There was a part of me saying, okay, let's have the directors, delay this, but I can do that. But I think they are important things that we need to consider as council. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment.
Any other comments on the motion? Being none, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Hartling. Appreciate your time working on this file. Moving on to staff reports, 9A, BC Wildfire Service deployment request by Chief DeRose. Do you have any presentation, Chief, before we put the motion on the table?
Your worship, if I may, I can
Yes.
speak to the report on the request.
Yes.
I don't have any fancy graphics or anything.
That's fine.
You just have to listen to me. So I'm here today to request a pre-approval for Revelstoke Fire Department to assist the province as needed during the 2024 wildfire season, contingent upon the assurance that adequate resources remain available in the city of Revelstoke for local emergencies to be provided. The reasons we need council to sign off on this is that legislation requires that the fire department cannot take the city-owned equipment and staff resources outside of the town without your direction. It's a legal requirement, so we need to ask for that permission. So just a bit of background, why we're asking for this. In times of provincial state of emergency for wildfires, BC Wildfire Service will request additional resources in equipment and people from various municipalities throughout the province, and such as Revelstoke. And so what we're doing is preparing ourselves to make those steps necessary, take those steps necessary to prepare in the event that you give the blessing to prepare for this. One of the things that the results of this, of course, is that if we do decide to deploy into the province, to assist the province, it needs to be contingent upon those local resources being available here for the situation that is present at the day. So our resource needs need to be met on a continual basis as we go through. Now, the Office of Fire Commissioner has requested information from us. Do we have any equipment that we'd be willing to make available? So I've assessed our equipment, assessed a Type 1 engine and a Type 6 wildland engine as well. These would both be 4-person crew. They're two different types of equipment. One's a structural engine, one's a wildfire unit. So they're slightly different. It depends on what the province is asking for at the time. And so these deployment requests coming from the province, typically from the BC Wildfire Structure Protection Coordination Office. They come at the last minute because things are blowing up. Things are getting busy in the province. And so you recall last year we had a very last minute request that I withdrew at the very last moment. And so these are subject to council's authorization. So here today to discuss this well in advance of getting those requests, so that we've already had the chance to discuss it in a much more relaxed environment and asking questions that you might have. I did want to highlight a couple of things. Financially, there's no direct expense to the city of Revelstoke for deploying firefighters and equipment. All fire department expenses are reimbursed by the province. Past experience of many BC fire departments indicate that all departments' expenses were covered with some additional revenue generated by the fire department improvements such as training or equipment. Locally, the benefit of the city is the invaluable experience that our firefighters get by going on these deployments. They learn skills that they can't get here because fortunately we haven't been attacked by a wildfire. So they don't have those skills, but unfortunately we can get those skills by sending our crews out to help other communities that are suffering from a wildfire impact. Another thing is that they also gain a lot of moral support. They gain a sense of pride and purpose going on these sorts of deployments. So I think that's another big benefit for the city, and especially for our firefighters. They come back with vastly improved understanding of how wildfire works when it comes to wildland interface. They gain knowledge about how to use the equipment, how to apply it properly, how to be effective. They're learning from people that have years and years of experience doing this. So we're not sending them out on their own to attack wildfires in other places. They're working alongside very experienced professionals with very good direction and learning all these skills to bring back to the city of Revelstoke. I think within that invaluable experience and knowledge that they gain, it improves our ability to protect our own community. So our firefighters are gaining those knowledges to protect Revelstoke residents and their properties. And I'd like to highlight that it's no additional cost to taxpayers to get that experience and that knowledge. So yeah, these benefits support this request. The council provided pre-approval to the fire department to prepare a crew for deployment in the 2024 wildfire season. And I'd be welcoming questions.
Thank you, Chief, for bringing us forward. I'm supportive of this. I think it's invaluable to our community, but also shows other community we're willing to help, we're willing to support, but also if something were to happen to us, that they'd be there for us. I've seen the town of Golden do this for the last few years, and Chief Pecora has done a wonderful job in allowing his staff or coordinating his staff to be able to go out and help sort of things. So I think it's beneficial. And then for those who are concerned about it, not only does the chief look at it at the time to make sure that he has the resources, staffing to do it, but also it is goes through our CAO as well to approve at the time. So we've got that double approval process there that we know that our community is taking care of. So definitely I'm supportive of that. But I'll ask council if they have any questions of Chief Joseph. So Councilor Chair.
I was going to put it on the table, Your Worship.
Okay. All right, then go for it, and then we can ask questions.
I move that pre-approval for the Revelstoke, for Revelstoke Fire Department to assist the province as needed during the 2024 wildfire season, contingent on assurance that adequate resources remain available to respond to the local emergencies be provided, and that the Chief Administrative Officer be authorized to approve at the time a BC wildfire request for assistance.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councilor Lusau. Any further discussion on this motion? Councilor Chair.
I just want to state, kind of second what you were saying, that I am in favor of this, Council and Chief. I think that we have a social responsibility to help our neighbors in their time of need, and in doing so, I hope that if we are ever in need, that we can expect the same level of service from them.
Thank you for that comment. Any other comments, Councilor Stakenhurst?
In general, I'm a huge advocate for the fire service and a great supporter of them. I do have some concerns in regards to this request. I believe last year when the request was initially made before it was withdrawn or shortly after it was withdrawn, we saw the highway closed for whatever reason. And then we also saw a high-rise incident, which is taxing on a generally understaffed fire department as it is. Not to mention that we are currently not meeting any of our National Fire Protection Agency objectives in regards to our staffing or our response times. So it's hard for me to be assured that the adequate resources will remain available to respond to local emergencies, because as it stands currently, we're understaffed and we're not meeting our response times. We've had vast amounts of development, which would suggest that these targets are probably not we're probably grossly underestimating our ability to respond to local incidents given the development that we've seen locally within the past year.
Any other comments from council? Councilor Lusau?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Sells.
Just a question when it comes to if we do approve firefighters to go out of town, how many paid firefighters would we have in town responding to our issues that could arise?
Through your worship to Councillor Lucio, it's difficult to say, and with the schedule that we have, what I would offer rather than saying how many we will have, to follow up the question and say the ones that would be going on deployment would be the ones that are already on holiday or days off, so they wouldn't be on the schedule already. So what we've discussed in the department with the career members is that we're not going to take any of the scheduled career members off of their duty to go. What we're going to do is if we get a request, we're going to approach the firefighters, career firefighters that are off duty on their regular days off or their holidays, and so they would cancel their holidays, postpone them to a later time in the year, and then take that opportunity to go on the deployment. We may only send one with 4 total, which would be 1 career and 3 volunteers. But if we have the opportunity, we would like to send 2 careers and 2 volunteers, but no more than that.
Okay. And then the hourly rate that we are getting from the province, do the volunteer firefighters get paid for their deployment, or does all that come back to the fire department?
Through your worship, yes, the volunteers would receive a pay that is specified within the document. Last year in 2023, we don't have a fully updated one for 2024 yet. It should come out the next few weeks or so. The 2023 rate was $49 an hour for single resource staff, including volunteers. For IFF union members, it's their collective agreement rates.
Okay. Yeah, my concern would just be the duration of a deployment really having overtime effects on our fire department here in town and what that financially would be for us.
Comment on that, Chief? It wouldn't indicate, I wouldn't impair that at all. Or would it?
Through your worship, could I get a little clarification on with the impact question?
I think Council Lucio was wanting to make sure that if our staff go out on this, that we're not going to incur more overtime here if something occurred here.
Through your worship, so the staff in town, the career firefighters in town, will not be paid overtime rates during a deployment, other than their normal callbacks and their fire calls and that sort of thing. The firefighters that are being deployed do qualify for overtime, depending on the number of hours that they're working, so the consecutive hours and that sort of thing. I hope that does that.
Yes, it does. I'm very much in support of helping the community around. I would just want to be aware of how this might affect our tax base.
Councilor Stevenage, do you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just to follow up with Councilor Lucio's comments in regards to the overtime rate. I mean, another concern that I would have is the city being at a financial risk for any kind of injury or long-term exposure, illness that could be occurred during a deployment to a province-wide emergency. And how do we differentiate between, cancer-causing carcinogens in other communities versus our communities, and that's a risk that all of our firefighters face. So that's something that I think we need to weigh in on this, and then maybe just on some other another issue that I would have is the impact that this would have on the overall insurance rating for the city of Revelstoke and residents of Revelstoke. Does this have any impact on insurance coverage dropping down the fire service? And then the risk, right?
Council, Chief Torresi, comment?
Through your worship, to answer the first question on the WCB thing. So one of the reasons we need council's authority to deploy a crew out of town is because once we leave our own area, we have authority to be there. And so by getting your authority, our direction, then yes, the WCB coverage of the city applies until the crew is accepted by BC Welfare. then the WCB coverage from BC Wildfire applies to all the activities that our crews are doing. So the work site then becomes the BC Wildfire work site. If a crew is injured, then that WorkSafe claim would fall under the BC Wildfire, not the city of Revelstoke. With the caveat that, of course, the city would have to pick up the interim costs for that would be reimbursed through that WCB. The cancer concerns of the workplace hazards, if you will. As far as I understand, the coverages that are in place through WorkSafe cover municipal structure firefighters when they are working within that capacity. So we're not wildland firefighters, but to the point of Councillor Stephenhurst, we're working in that environment with the wildfire smoke as well. So it should form all one part of the entire workplace hazards that have been established by WorkSafe and that. On the question of the insurance coverage, we can, if it was a long-term change in the service levels, whether it's an increase or a decrease, those changes are not usually reflected within hours, 24-hour, 48-hour sort of thing. It takes months to a year in order to get reflected through the insurance rates. But I would like to add that if you are have an insured property, whether it's a home or a boat or a vehicle, and there is a wildfire within a certain perimeter of your property or the property you want to reinsure, you should do that before wildfire season happens because you may have trouble getting that insurance. So there is that question there as well. I would advise people to insure early, reinsure early if you're
Follow-up, Councillor?
No, I think I'll leave it. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Palmer, and then I'll call the question.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Souls. We'll be bringing a different lens on this. First of all, thank you to the fire through the mayor. Thank you for bringing this proactively well in advance so we can really think through that. And thank you for the motion sort of framing it for the 2024 season. I do anticipate we'll have this dialogue again next year. In the event that I felt good about our preparation, and that's at the council level for the emergency that's going to happen eventually in Revelstoke, that fire or whatever that is, I'd be all over this and saying, yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't we be good neighbors and provide assistance? And all the merits that you have on there. You got good people, they're training. The firefighters are a special breed in that they really care, and then all that training, and I can see the excitement of the potential of this as well. And so I applaud that, and I do applaud the work that the volunteers and the career firefighters do, and I don't want to lose that in the dialogue. The question that I have, Mayor Souls, is what our responsibility at the council level, so that the what ifs, and the what ifs aren't far-fetched. We've been struggling with this council and previously with the narrative that we have, and councillors here sharing the narrative. Are we adequately sourced for our own stuff? And I think there's an uneasiness there. Furthermore, on our preparation, or I would argue lack of preparation for emergency. For example, Mayor Souls, I haven't been briefed on where the binder is for the state of emergency. If I'm acting mayor when you're gone, we haven't had training on emergency preparedness, our role as individual councillors. And I'll pause there for a moment because I do sense some body language on this. It's dead serious. If we have a fire in when the firefighters deployed, say Kelowna last year, Our forest is tinder dry already. I was in the forest this morning. It's tinder dry already. We're just in the early May. Normally it's raining. We're not having rain. We know our snowpack is way down. So I'm just challenging that aspect of people saying, okay, there's a councillor going on. I'm taking this seriously, and I absolutely support the fire department. I want to support this, but I can't because I do not believe that we are prepared. I don't believe we've had adequate training. I don't think we've had, so I think it's going to be chaos when we have that emergency. And so as much as I want to make sure that I'm a good neighbor to whoever that is in the province, or if it's nearby, my responsibility is first to this community. It's not first as much, and I really wrestled with this. So it's my responsibility to be supportive of individual staff. We want to be the employer of choice, those kind of, there's aspects of that, and I agree with that. But really, our responsibility is what's our responsibility to the community? So this may go through, I'll accept where the overall will of council, but I cannot support something without that lack of understanding, the training, making sure that we do have adequate resources, a little bit of inconsistency, saying that we can go down to 4 in the report, 4 career and 12 volunteers, and that's an inconsistent message to what I've heard before, saying we need more people, more full-time. We don't have enough volunteers, and so there's an inconsistency there. But mostly, as a council member, I do not feel we're prepared, and I think it would be irresponsible for me to vote in favor of this as much as I would love to. So thank you.
Any other comment? Councillor Stapleton, one last comment.
Well, yeah, one last comment. Thank you. I think what this highlights to me is yes, this is an important decision that council has to face today, but ultimately I think what we need to be doing around the council table, and it's not necessarily the topic being discussed at hand, is what do we want for our fire service? How do we want to support them? What kind of staffing do we want? And what's the financial implication to the city of Revelstoke? And I think that's a wholesome discussion that I'm prepared to discuss at a later time with the chief. But I think it's something that we've been kind of skirting around for the last year and a half. But I think if the fire department had the support of council, this wouldn't even be a question. We would say fine, go. But the problem that Councillor Palmer has highlighted is the fact that the fire department is grossly understaffed, and I have my reservations. But ultimately, I'm willing to trust the chief and his recommendation on this decision. So that's my comment. Thank you.
I have Councillor Orlando.
Your worship, thank you. I'm going to support the chief in the recommendation here. Since the Philmon report came out over 20 years ago, or when it was actually released, something like that, I think we've, as a province, been playing catch up on these issues. Certainly, last year was a wake-up call. And since then, I've seen a lot more response from provincial government in their attempts to organize, and I see in this request letter, part of that. And unfortunately, I definitely hear councillors expressing their concerns about our level of staffing and staffing resources. I am in no way an expert about these topics at all, but others have experience in this area, so I hear those. For today, I will support this request, but I want to put this question forth to maybe to staff, maybe through the chair to the mayor, or for a quick discussion now. In terms of addressing and resolving ongoing issues with level of staffing resources, equipment resources. In the past, we had a lot of talk 10, 15 years ago about trucks and equipment more, and now we're talking about a bit more about staffing resources or communications issues, as Councillor Palmer expressed concern. How do we do that in a formal process so we can bring this through step by step? Because to me, inevitably, it's going to be a step by step process, and I feel that just addressing it on agenda item by agenda item, that we don't necessarily get to that resolution unless we have a focused process. So, for example, would that be through the budget process? Would that be through a special request? Is this resourcing document something that requires a special study, a consultant, somebody to take a look at what we need? How do we do that in an ordered way?
Chief Torossi, will you weigh in on that? Because looks like you're prepared to answer that question.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And to Councillor Orlando. A couple of things in there. We have finalized the RFP for the master plan, the service level review and master plan.
Great.
And I think that would be the document and the process that you're referring to with the comments from the other councillors as well. How do we get to where we need to be? Council needs to be able to specify the level of service and how do we get there.
Great.
And I think that when we get the master plan, I just made a note here that the master plan is anticipated to be final or finished up by December of 2024. And so the consultants are going to be requesting participation from council as well as many of the stakeholders in Revelstoke to help you determine what those recommendations that are coming forward will look like. So that hopefully in 2025, we'll have the same discussion in a different context. And then we'll be able to keep moving forward in 2025. So all of these, I would call it ad hoc requests that I do bring forward to council is an interim operations.
Yes.
Business must go on. This is what's happening right now. And I fully recognize that it would be much better to have a proper master plan for a 5 or a 10-year period to guide council and the fire department into the future. So thank you for that.
Mr. Parliament.
Yeah, just quickly, Mr. Mayor and council, thank you. I do concur with the recommendation, but I want to add, I am fully aware of the perceived lack of confidence in the overall emergency plan, lack of tabletop training, et cetera. I have discussed this with our partners, both at the CSRD and locally. And specifically, I've had conversations with Dave Mon. We are planning a couple of tabletop exercises. We are getting staff more and more updated on EOC protocols and training. But specifically, I've had very detailed conversations with both the union and the fire chief on the staffing levels. We have a plan. We're going to be bringing it forward to council in June. We are internally working on that because we had some issues this spring where we had several people away and it exposed our fire department. We were lucky, knock on wood, that there was no major structural fire. But the chief and I and the union have worked, and we are presenting a staff report to council addressing those issues, which will help, I think, build some confidence, not only with the overall emergency plan, but also the potential secondment to assist the province in the event of a wildfire. So we are addressing the staffing issues as were addressed in the org review some two and a half years ago. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate that comment. Thank you. Councilor Luciano.
Thank you, Marcellus. Just back to the chief's comment about the master plan. I just see an issue with it affecting the 2025 financial plan because we are trying to get that done towards the end of the year. And if that is coming to us in December to then have a discussion in January, it might just really put the crunch on that timeline for that to really be included in that financial plan.
Yep. Good comment. All right, I'm going to call the question on the motion on the table. All those in favor? Opposed? Note Councilor Palmer is opposed. Balance of council in favor. This motion passed. We are done for the day. Thank you, staff. Appreciate all of your time. And council for being here. I'm going to call for termination of the meeting. Councilor Stapleton, Councilor Devlin, all in favor. Motion's carried. We are done. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Delassalle.
Oh, just one quick question for council.